show your screen. Once we're done with Carolyn's presentation, we will open up the floor for any questions. So fill out the questions. At the end, we'll read any questions and go through those. So Carolyn, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Greetings to everyone who's participated in the webinar. I'm glad you guys took the time out of your day to listen to some of the new features that are included in SedonaSchedule. So we have 6 major things that I'm going to be covering during this session. The new clock out and clock in feature that's available for both jobs and tickets. I'm going to show you how to make corrections if you make a mistake with the clock out, clock in functionality. Copying of appointments is now available for both job appointments and for ticket appointments. Overnight appointments is now supported, and I'm going to show you how that works with both jobs and tickets. And the next item is no dispatch job appointments. This was a feature that was available in the old service module that we have now made functional for SedonaSchedule. Oh, sorry for that, guys. And then the last thing is the new export to Excel of the ticket queue, and I'm going to show you how that works as well. So Michael's going to be the moderator on this, and if there's any questions, he'll be kind of fielding those, and we'll take them at the end if we have time to address any once we get through all the different features I want to show to you. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the new clock in and the clock out feature, or clock out, clock in feature. And I first want to show you my scheduling board from yesterday, just to kind of show you some tickets and jobs that I have clocked out for lunches, just to kind of show you how your screen is going to look if you use this functionality. So the way this is designed to work is for companies that have technicians on tickets or on jobs, and you do not want to post time against a ticket or a job that's for lunches, or where a technician or installer has to leave the job or ticket to go pick up parts. It's a way of stopping the clock from ticking on that job or ticket from a costing and from a billing standpoint on service, and then resuming the time again for tickets on billable time and for costing for both jobs and tickets. This feature allows you to clock out and clock in on the same ticket or the same job multiple times. So you could go in and out throughout the day if a guy has to come and go multiple times. So it's not limited to just one clock out and clock back in. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go to my scheduling board for today, which is April 9th. And I want to show you how to use the clock out feature on a job first. So the job that I'm going to use is this job number 303. So my installer, he's already been dispatched to this job. He's on his way at 7 o'clock in the morning. He arrived at 7:30, so he's there working. And so he's going to be clocking out for lunch so that we're only costing the amount of time they actually spent working at the job. So something that's new to SedonaOffice, SedonaSchedule is right-click. We've pretty much stayed away from a right-click feature until recently. So all the clock out and clock ins are controlled by a right-click. Okay, so I'm on this job, 303. So if I do a right-click, I get 2 options, doing a clock out or a clock in, and to copy appointment, which we'll talk about later on. Okay, the first option that you need to select is the clock out reason. Why am I clocking out of this job or ticket if it's for a ticket? And you'll get a drop-down list. And the choices here are coming from the miscellaneous appointments setup. So this could be whatever you want on your list. We do deliver a certain canned list of choices with the software that you can add other things to the list. I put in pickup parts, traffic, so whatever it is you want to add to the list is available. So I'm going to be clocking out my installer for lunch. So I'm going to click lunch, and then I'm going to put in the time that he's actually going to be clocking out for lunch. So he's clocking out at 11:30 in the morning. He's taking an early lunch. Okay, and then I click on the clock out. And then what will happen is the original job appointment will end we create a miscellaneous appointment for at the time starting when he clocked out, so that the clock has now stopped ticking for costing purposes on this job at 11:30 a.m. when I clocked him out of the job. Okay, so when I do the clock out feature, the lunch appointment takes up the rest of the time of the originally scheduled job. So if I had scheduled a job for 8 hours, when you clock out, the miscellaneous appointment that's created for that clock out reason fills up the rest of the time, so that you can see that that person, that installer tech, should still be busy up until the end of the original total ticket appointment time or job time. Okay, so this doesn't get costed anywhere. It's just a regular miscellaneous appointment, just to show that he is not working on that job. He's at lunch at this time. Okay, so if I want to clock him back in, click on that miscellaneous appointment, right-click, and we're going to clock him back in. And this first line item, if this were a job, is going to say, what is he clocking back in to do? And this is looking at your job labor tasks. So when I originally scheduled this job appointment, if I had selected the labor task that he was going to be doing while he was there, it automatically defaults to that. So when I set up this particular job appointment, I set up that he was going to be doing installation. So if when I originally set up the appointment, I had picked pre-wire or some other labor task, that would default automatically here. So you can change that, but the default will be what was in that job appointment on the original schedule. Okay, and then my clock in time is when is he back on the job. So he was from lunch from 11:30 a.m. and he's clocking back in at 12 p.m. And click on my clock in. So now the lunch miscellaneous appointment ends and the job restarts. So when you click on the restarted job appointment, if you look over on the ticket viewer on the left, it shows that he was dispatched to this portion of that job appointment starting at noon, arrived at noon, and so when we find out how much time he spent on the job or when he left, then we'll complete the appointment. Or we can clock him out again to go get parts or whatever else. Okay. So that's how it works on a job. For tickets, it's not quite as complicated clocking in and clocking out on a ticket. So I'd like to show you ticket number 3087, which is this one. So the technician has been dispatched. He's on a long service ticket. So I'm going to clock him out for lunch as well. So I'm going to click on that appointment, right-click, select my clock out reason, lunch, and select my time. So it's 11:30 a.m. and clock out. So again, it behaves almost the same way that it did on a job. The only thing different that you're seeing on the scheduling board is the color background. So on a job, when you clock out, the background color changes to red on the original portion of the appointment. If it's a ticket, it changes to orange as if it's a go back. He has to go back to that ticket. Okay. So the clock out time now on this first part of that ticket appointment, he was on his way at 6:45, arrived at 7, and he clocked out for lunch at 11:30. Okay, so when he's done with lunch, right-click, clock him back in. So the difference on the clock in on a ticket versus a job is there is no labor task involved. It's just the time that he's coming back onto that ticket to begin work again. Okay, so I'm just going to tab over here. Sorry, mouse troubles. All right, so 12 o'clock p.m. that he was back, clock in, and the ticket resumes here. So he's back on site, arrived at 12 p.m., and then we'll find out later on when he finishes up to put his departure time. Okay, so it's pretty easy to use. People do make mistakes, so if for some reason you put in the wrong clock in and clock out time, you'd have to back up and delete the restarted appointment, go back and delete the original lunch clock out appointment and start again. So for example, this lunch should have been from 12 to 12:30 instead of 11:30 to 12. So I would click on the restarted ticket appointment here, this small portion, press delete on my keyboard. Oh, excuse me. I got to edit it. I beg your pardon. You have to go into edit mode. You need to clear out the dispatch time said it restarted automatically when we clock back in on that appointment. So I'm just tabbing through, clearing out the dispatch and the arrival time. I'm going to save. Okay, so now I can delete that appointment. Somebody put us on hold. Sorry for the music. Okay, the music's over. All right, so if I clocked out incorrectly, I'm going to go ahead and delete that lunch appointment, which is a miscellaneous appointment. So I just click once, press delete. This brings up that miscellaneous appointment from the original clock out. I'm going to click on the delete button at the bottom, and yes. And that takes us back to our original ticket, and I can go in and do the clock out again. So I have to edit this, get rid of my original clock out to get him back into on-site mode. Okay, so that's where it started. So now I'm going to clock him out correctly of how it should have been. So instead of, it remembers the last time we clocked him out. So instead of 11:30, it was 12 o'clock p.m. And then we clock him back in at 12:30. And clock in. Right, so this one goes to red because it's finished, my lunch, my continuation of that ticket appointment. So it's a little time consuming, so do take care when you're doing your clock in and clock out so that you don't have to backtrack too far to fix these. Okay, the next thing that I'd like to demonstrate is the new copy appointments feature. And this is available to copy technician or installer appointments for both jobs and for tickets. So the first one I'm going to show you is how to copy this particular ticket. I have a ticket scheduled for Madison this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and he needs to take somebody else to go with him. So if I just right-click on that particular appointment, click on Copy, and then I select the person that I'm going to have go with him. And let's put Max since he's open. Click on his time slot where I want him to go, right-click, paste, and it'll copy the exact length of time that I had on the original appointment. Okay, so it can be done for the same day, the same person, a different day, a different person. So if I know that this inspection is going to run overtime and he's going to have to go back tomorrow, I can highlight the ticket, right-click and copy, and then I can go to tomorrow and paste it in tomorrow. So say he's going to be back tomorrow afternoon to finish up. So it makes it very simple on rescheduling or adding on additional technicians to the original ticket. So it's a very nice feature. And the same thing works for if you need to delete the copied appointment. Click on that appointment, press the delete key on your keyboard, and yes to confirm that it's going away. All right, so that works the same, very similarly for the jobs. So if you have a job appointment that you want to copy, so for instance, I wanted to copy this one, and I want to send Milton out to help out as well. Do a right-click, copy, click on the person and the time slot you want to use, right-click, and paste. So, and then once the new appointment is there, if the time needs to change, so I can make this particular person's a shorter length of time or a longer than the original appointment once it's over there from the copy. Or you can leave it alone. Okay, so now I have two people going out on that same job on that same day. Okay, the next thing I would like to discuss is what we call overnight appointments. And this is something that we had kind of issues with a few versions ago, but we've fine-tuned it and it's working very well. So what an overnight appointment is, where the original appointment starts on one day and finishes up the next. So if you have situations where you have to go out and do work in the evening and finish up the next morning, the software will now allow for that. And you are also able to use the clock in and clock out features for those overnight appointments as well. So I'd like to show you an overnight job appointment that I created that started yesterday on the 8th. So on Milton Morris, job number 191, he started work on this particular job at 7:30 p.m. yesterday, and he arrived at 8, and he departed at noon, midnight. So if I advance to today, and I scroll up a little bit, you'll be able to see the continuation. And he clocked out for lunch at midnight, so I'm sitting here waiting to clock him back in, just to show you that you can do that. So if I click on this, sorry, my mouse isn't working right here. Go back to yesterday. Oh, I already clocked him back in. So you have continuation appointments, and when you're scheduling those multi-day or overnight appointments, they're very easy to set up. It's just making sure that you set the starting time and the length of time so it does span onto more than one day. So if you want to take a look at, let's see, I'm going to schedule a new overnight appointment on today, and I'm going to use Mac because he looks like he's wide open. So I'm going to start an appointment in the 7 p.m. time slot. If I don't, make sure that I'm clicking on my jobs hammer up at the top. So I'm double clicking on here to open up the job list. Double click. Here's my job list. And I'm going to use job number 191. All right, so this is our job scheduling board. For those of you that are doing job scheduling through SedonaSchedule, you're familiar with this. So the job task is the first thing I need to select. This is required. As mentioned in previous release notes, you do not have to select a labor task. However, if you're going to be using the clock in and clock out feature, it'll make it easier if you do select the labor task that installer will be doing. That way you won't have to select a labor task when you're clocking that person out or back in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select my labor task. Starting at 7 p.m. and it's defaulting to 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's because the labor task that I have assigned here has a default number of minutes that goes along with it, so many hours that I should be there. But I can change that. So we're starting at 7 p.m. I can make that go longer or shorter if I'd like to. It's going to be there till 4 a.m. Again, I can schedule multiple installers as well if I want to by selecting additional names. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule this one person, Mac. Click on my scheduling button at the bottom. All right, and this is our confirmation form. I'm going to schedule Mac and save. All right, so now if you take a look at that appointment, the job, it starts at 7 p.m. And if we look at tomorrow's schedule, you're going to see the continuation of that job appointment. It goes all the way through to 4 a.m. is when it stops tomorrow. Okay, so back to today. Okay, and the dispatching for those overnight appointments are exactly the same as you would dispatch any other appointment. The clock in and clock out, though, one thing that you have to be aware of is that if we're clocking a person out for lunch, you cannot do it in advance. So if you know that he's going to be taking lunch from 1 o'clock in the morning the next day until 1:30, you can't do that until tomorrow because the software still has locked that down where you can't future dispatch any kind of an appointment, either for a job or for a service ticket. So that will have to be done once you get into the next day, anytime after midnight. Okay, the next thing that I'd like to discuss is what we call no dispatch job appointments, and this pertains only to jobs. It is not available for service tickets. And what controls, or let me describe no dispatch jobs first. Some of our customers have desired to be able to schedule job appointments on the scheduling board, but they don't want to actually have to go in and enter dispatch times for those jobs. They're handling it either through payroll timesheets or manual timesheets or some other method outside of Sedona or within Sedona. So if you don't want to dispatch a particular job appointment, there's a new option that's available within that appointment that you've created. And what controls whether a job is non-dispatched or not is based on the installation company attached to the job. So every job, when you're setting up a new job, on the work order form of that job, there is a field that says who is the install company for this job. So I'm going to go into Sedona to show you and remind you of where that flag setting is to control whether you're going to have completed only appointments or non-dispatched appointments. So I'm in Sedona Setup. I'm on the install company setup table here, and I've created a special install company called MIND, no dispatch. And what controls whether we're not dispatching is this option down here under appointments. So if you select no, completed only, that means we will not be dispatching any time against a job assigned to that install company. Okay, so when I click on this particular job, 338, I assign that job when I set it up to my non-dispatching company. And so when you get ready to say that we're completed with it, you can complete that appointment just to show that it was accomplished or completed by that installer. You could either just check this box here over on the ticket viewer side or the detail viewer, or you could go into edit on that appointment and you can mark it as completed and save. So the background color will turn red, that you know it was completed. Okay, so there's nothing that requires you that you complete these appointments. So if you just want to know that those jobs are on the scheduling board, you're never going to dispatch them and you're not completing them, you do have that option as well. But obviously I would want to know if that work was performed. So I'm going to complete that. Background color turns red. Okay, so you do have to have the install company set up for that option to be able to just check that checkbox to say that it is completed without having to put any dispatch time. All right, the next option I would like to show to you is something that is new, and it's from the ticket queue. We have put in a feature to be able to export the ticket list to Excel. So when you're in the queue and you click on the submenu at the top to bring up all the option buttons on what you're viewing in the ticket list, there's a new button here, Export to Excel. So what will export is what is currently viewed here in the grid. So if you decide that you want certain fields in a certain order, however it's displayed is how that data is going to get exported into an Excel work file. So if we click on the Export to Excel button, this brings up your Windows file saver, so you decide where you're going to put it, whatever you're going to call it, give it a file name. Excuse me, have my cap lock on. And save. Now, currently, there is no security. Anyone who has access to SedonaSchedule and any of the features within here is able to export that. We did have a couple of customers ask us to put security on that button to limit who is able to actually perform that export. That will be available in the next release that's coming out. And the security permission that will control if you're able to perform the export is the same permission that we are currently using under the Customer Query Builder security. So if you go into your user group security, I'll show you my administrator. So the feature that says Export to Excel or Export Queries, right here, Export Customer Queries will also control whether somebody can export the ticket queue from SedonaSchedule. So if they don't have that permission, they will not be able to use this export feature. Okay. One of the nice things, the way this exports, and you'll see this in the release notes as well, is if you are using ticket grouping within the queue. So for instance, if I wanted to group my ticket queue by city to see how many tickets I have in each city, if I drag my city up into the gray header, we now have a breakdown of all the different cities and how many tickets in each city that I have out there. So if I chose to export the queue just as it is now, it will export these groupings, and there'll be an indentation on the Excel export file with the tickets within each of those headers. It looks really nice on the export. Please look at the release notes. There's a good sample of how this looks exported. Dave and our development department did a beautiful job on this. We'd like to thank him for that. All the features of all the clock in and clock out features and copies, the overnight appointments, Roger Davis, I want to give credit to. He spent a lot of time on this, and we did a lot of testing together. And it's a great new feature that I think you're all going to be able to use. Okay, one last thing that I'd kind of like to discuss is there was a new block that we have put into the software. I told Mike I wasn't going to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. If you have a ticket and you put parts on that ticket, and that ticket's already scheduled with a technician, and in your system you are relieving inventory from a technician's truck, once you put a part on there, some people were deleting appointments, and somehow the parts were getting stuck in limbo, that we would relieve parts from a technician's truck when he really never was going to accomplish that appointment. So we have put a warning message in there, and I'd like to show you a ticket number that I'd set up. So on this ticket, it's scheduled. I put a part here on the ticket, and it's assumed to be coming out of the technician's truck. So if I were to try and delete this appointment, are you sure? You'll get a pop-up message. If there were any parts that were put on that ticket that are linked to the technician's warehouse, it's not going to let you do that. So the only other option that you have around this is to take the part off the ticket and put them back on later on once you find out who's going. Or the other option you have is if those parts have already been issued out of stock and they're into the ticket and you want to leave them there, if you change your service options up at the top and switch over to the warehouse view, if those parts are not coming out of that tech's truck, you can now flip the warehouse to a different warehouse of where they should be coming out of. So it's either remove the part from the ticket, then you can delete the appointment, or you can switch the warehouse and then delete the appointment. All right, I'm pretty much covered everything that I want to discuss. Michael, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we have a few questions. The first question I think I'll answer myself, and a few people asked this, is the new clock in and clock out functionality available through the field service unit? The simple answer is right now, today, no. This will be added, though, in a future release of the field service unit. There is a planned major release of the field service unit coming out within the next couple weeks, and it will not be in that release. It will most likely be in the release thereafter. So that was it. There's quite a few on those, so let me just go through this list. So Carolyn, I don't believe there's a way for this, but someone asked, is there a way to export the schedule to Google or Outlook? There's no ability for that right now. Would that be correct?
No, there's just the current mapping for one technician's day.
Okay. So someone
which I'm
also
sure
asked,
everybody knows how to do that.
Right. So someone asked, is there a way to schedule a job ticket for a full week? And what would be your suggestion if I had a job and I needed to have a technician go there Monday through Friday?
A job or a ticket? A job, right?
A job.
Okay, so if I want to schedule a job for a full week, that's very easy. The software already does that. So I'm going to double click on Mac, and I'm going to pick a job, anything. All right, so I'm going to start with my install. I'm going to pick my labor task, and so if he's going to be here on the 9th, I'm holding down the control key on my keyboard. I'm picking up the 10th, the 11th, and he's going to be there Monday and Tuesday, or whatever days you highlight on the calendar. So here's the same person all these days for the same amount of time. It does assume the same amount of time for the appointment span. You can also add an additional person if you want to. and it will add that same person for all the same days, and it will show you any scheduling conflicts. Okay, so I'm going to remove Mike Walker. Remove them all. Also, if it's going to be an entire week, and you just want to start for the entire week, not have to click on each individual day. If you click over to the left of the week here and just double click, it highlights the entire week. So if you exclude Saturdays and Sundays, oops, click on the button right. You obviously wouldn't want to work on the weekend. I didn't pick my guy, Mike Walker, this time. So it's the entire week, whoever you select. And then schedule, confirm. So this is from the 14th through the 18th. So if we go take a look at next week, here's the job on the 14th, the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th.
And then, Carolyn, any of those individual appointments could be edited and modified if need to be, correct?
Yes, they could be moved, shortened, lengthened, moved to somebody else if you change your mind. Yes, once they're on the board, you can do anything you want with them, delete them even. And so deleting one appointment does not affect the rest.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. This is a real good question too. When using the no completed job feature without the schedule time, can you use that for technicians, for subcontractors?
No, not currently. It only works with jobs.
Okay. So it won't work with the service tickets right now?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Let me just go through these. There's a few more in here. I'm not sure what this is asking. Maybe you'll understand. With this release, do you still have to close out the ticket after billing and go back in to get the close feature checkbox?
No, if you're on Bill 210, I think is when we rolled out the new button for closing a ticket. It still works the same way as if when you invoice a ticket. Well, I don't have one here I can do. There's two check boxes when you get ready to invoice a ticket. So if you check invoice and close and hit the create invoice button, it creates the invoice and closes the ticket all at once. You don't have to go out there and do the separate step.
Okay. I'm not sure what this means. If you make an appointment for a job, why does that not show up on the schedule board?
If they're asking about the old schedule board, that has no relationship to the new Sedona schedule. So anyone scheduling here, that is mutually exclusive, has nothing to do with Sedona schedule. These tickets that show here do show what's been scheduled through Sedona schedule, but the jobs don't. Hopefully we're going to discontinue this whole scheduling board as everybody moves over to Sedona schedule. That is our desire.
Correct.
This is much better functionality than using the old schedule board.
Okay. This question is, what was the confirm button for when you right-click on a job?
Great question. The firm was introduced in Bill 209/210, and it was just a way of marking an appointment that it's a firm appointment. We don't want anyone to change that. So if you do a right-click and select firm, it changes the background color to pink to definitely get your attention. Pink's a wild color. But it just means we do not want to move that appointment. It's a firm commitment to the customer. Don't move it. So I can't move that appointment. Once I've marked it as firm, you can't do anything with it. If it turns out you want to be able to move it, you can uncheck the firm, and then you can move it.
And does that work for both jobs and service appointments?
Yes, it does.
And the next question, I think I know the answer, but I'll let you do it. When you use the complete only option on a job appointment, does it exclude that from job costing?
Yes, because we're not logging any time into the job. We're just saying it was finished. So if you want to record cost for the time, you're going to have to do either batch timesheets through job management using the timesheet batches, or manually put timesheets into each job, or using the payroll timesheets function. So all we're doing with those completed only is saying that appointment was completed, and it has nothing else to do with anything with costing or recording how much time was spent there.
Very good. The next question is, how does the Add to Next Cycle checkbox work on the Billing tab in this ticket?
I wasn't aware that went out with this release. It was kind of supposed to be masked. I'm going to refrain from talking about that because it isn't quite finished yet. So that will come out in the next release notice, the functionality of how that works. That was a paid feature by another customer.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Okay, so that's something that will be released in the future. So,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And when will the old schedule board become obsolete? Do we have a time frame on that, or?
I don't know that we do. I know that on my list of things that we still haven't ported over from old service, I think I have 2 things left on it that we still need to do. But neither one of them are showstoppers, that people can't move over here and get all the same, if not better, functionality than the old service board.
Very good. When a firm appointment is selected, Carolyn, can anybody unselect it, or is there any type of security where just the person who created it can unselect it?
There's no security. Pretty much all of the Sedona schedule, the queues, other than the new feature of security we put on the export to Excel, it's wide open. Anyone could do anything if you allow them permission to get into service.
Okay. Somebody asked this question, but I'm going to tell them we'll get back to them on it. What does the group ticket function do? That is probably a webinar in itself.
Yes,
So
it is.
if anyone has any questions on that, I believe, is there a document we've created on that, Carolyn?
I believe there is. Okay. I'm not sure if it made it out to the website yet. We're using it internally, but yeah, we probably could do a webinar on that if we have enough interest.
Yeah, I think so. Someone asked, does the miscellaneous appointment go to the labor hours report?
It does not. It's just time that we are taking away from a job or a ticket that is undocumented. And I was hoping that question would be raised because I know a lot of our customers create what they call the job of the month to record unabsorbed labor time as lunches, as going to pick up parts or whatever they need to do. So if you do still want to track every hour of a person's day that you're paying them for, you probably want to do that job of the day, or month, and record those hours into that job, the company job.
Does flagging the appointment as firm log it into the service ticket, in the service ticket log?
I'm not sure. Let's find out. Good question. Log this firm. Let's open the ticket. It does not, but it sounds like a good idea to add. We should talk to Dave about that.
Okay. I think we should add that, and as well as when you drag it from one technician to another, does it record that in the log also?
It does. It does. The drag and drop shows that you rescheduled it with someone new.
Okay, very good. Okay. This question, I'm not sure which version it was. Maybe you know, Carolyn. But what version was the job and service tickets to show on the same schedule? When was that made available?
Oh, my goodness. I couldn't even tell you. It's been there for quite some time.
It's been a couple months now, hasn't it?
I think it was 2009, possibly earlier. I think it was earlier than 2009, actually. I'd have to ask Roger when we released it. Seems like a long time ago, but it really hasn't been that long.
Someone asked, can Can anyone change a firm appointment? We answered yes. Why can't you schedule a multiple day appointment for a job through the job queue? Labor appointments. I'm not sure what that means. You want to take a guess at that?
Well, if you're out in the main application and you're in a job and you're scheduling your jobs from here, this was the old way to schedule your job appointments. So if you did a right click, add a new appointment, you can only do one at a time here. That's the beauty of using SedonaSchedule, where you could select multiple people. This whole grid, the development tools that we had don't allow you to do multi-selects on here.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So we really encourage people to start using this. And for a question that hasn't been asked yet, which I think a lot of our customers are starting to do, is scheduling your jobs on this board is different. It is new. It's probably easier to use once you get used to it. But if you don't want your installers and your technicians on the same scheduling board, you can set up a different display group. Put your technicians on one and your installers on another, so that they could be separate if they really operate under different departments, and you don't want to mix and match them. So they could be together, separate, whatever your preference is.
Okay. So someone asks, is there any way that the person who scheduled the firm appointment could be the only one that modifies it? What I suggest is please submit that to use our online Sedona support and submit that as an enhancement request. It might be something we can do. We can also put that into the queue for voting for Sedona enhancements as well. So anytime anybody has a suggestion or idea on how we could improve the application, make it better, add a new feature, please submit those through our online system, and that way we'll get it into our enhancement list. How do I get my schedule board to show 24 hours?
It all depends on what you're looking at on your view here. Right now I'm having to scroll just because our screen resolution coming in from a remote connection. But up at the top here, there are zoom buttons that you can make this scheduling board larger or smaller, depending on how large you want to see those time slots. So if you take it down to the lowest, you can pretty much see almost the whole day. Probably if you have a regular monitor, that you can see the whole day without scrolling up and down. I hope that answered that question. A lot of people don't know about these zoom buttons up here at the top.
Okay. Okay. So you could use the zoom buttons to zoom in and out, but it's also going to depend on your screen resolution.
This is true. I'm scrolling now just because I'm in an RDP session, so that's why it's hard. I have to scroll a little bit, but normally the maximum zoom in, you could see the whole thing without having to scroll at all.
Okay. Okay. Can we print out a technician's schedule for a week?
Not that will look like a calendar. There is the report out on the report manager already called the technician schedule, and you can print a date range of appointments for jobs or tickets or both. It's just a report and you can page break on each person, but it wouldn't look like a calendar like this. It's a report with a person's name and then everything below that they're scheduled for on that date and time.
Okay, and so I got just a few more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. Let me find one in here. Is the right click in and click out available in 2.09? So what version was that made available?
The right click came out as of version 2.10. What we first released was the firm appointment. That was the first right-click functionality. The copy and the clock out and clock in were the next things that were added in 2.12 and 2.13.
Okay.
So
is there a way
prior to that, those first things, there was no right-click anywhere in the service application, but now we have right-click again.
Okay. Is there a way to turn on the auto refresh in the service options and have it stay that way?
It's been asked for. It's something that we haven't done yet, though. So
Okay.
if you want the auto refresh on, first thing of the day, turn it on, but it defaults to off.
Okay, so that's something that's on our internal enhancement list to get there. Okay.
I think it's in the enhancement queue, so if people want to vote on that, they can vote for that if it's high priority.
Okay. Would you show, if you have a display group and you want to remove a technician from there because they're no longer with you, how do you go about how do you do that?
It actually is not done from service any longer. It's all done through Sedona Setup. So if you have an employee that you're going to be inactivating and you want them off the schedule board, it used to be pretty convoluted that you'd have to first take them out of the display group, then inactivate them to get them off the board. Now we changed that with 212. So if you're going to inactivate an employee, first I would go to my schedule board if he had any appointments, get him moved off to make sure that his appointments get reassigned. So under employees, let's say that Mac, I'm going to inactivate. So when you click inactivate and apply, you'll get this message. It says, press yes to remove the employee from all display groups or no to save without modifying. So if you say yes, that employee will be taken out of any display group that they're associated with. If you say no, it'll inactivate the employee, but they're going to stay on your schedule board. So if you select the no, and you go on the schedule board, if you want to take them off the schedule board out of the display groups, you have to go back, reactivate the employee, and then trigger this message again to get them out of the display groups.
Okay, very good.
Make
so
sense?
One last question. Okay. I know there were some other questions asked. Some of them are more individual nature. We will get back to everybody who responded with a question to make sure that it was properly answered. But the last one is, what does the group day with owner mean?
The group day with owner is a way of seeing multiple days on the same scheduling board for multiple employees. So for example, first thing I do is turn off my calendar bar to give me more real estate here. So let's say I wanted to see what was the coming schedule for a couple of these guys for today and tomorrow. So first I would select which guys I want to see the future on. So I want to see Mark, Taylor, and Marshall. So I can uncheck everyone first and select Mark and Marshall. Okay, so now I just have these two people. I don't want unassigned, so I'm going to turn that off. And then turn my calendar bar back on. So say I want to see the schedule for the next 3 days. I'm using my mouse to highlight 3 consecutive days over on the calendar on the left. And then if we click on the group day with owner, this will show Mark Taylor these 3 days side by side. So I can see them together. So it's also a great way of seeing maybe a much larger span of time for an individual if you want to.
And if you uncheck that, then it groups it by the date with each technician.
It groups it by the date, right.
Right.
So here's the 9th for both of them, the 10th for both of them. So if you guys have guys going out as teams, this is a great way to see who's available if they're going out as a team. The other thing that is really helpful too is if you wanted to see a person's schedule for the next month, if I have the scheduling board up entirely here for this whole group, if you click on month, this is very tiny and very difficult to read. So if I wanted to see just one person, see what their month looks like or their week, if I just select on one individual, okay, so I just have Mark Taylor. I just put on my single day view, and let's go to months now. So I can see his entire month for just that one person, or the entire week. It's a little easier to read.
Great, thank you. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much. Really appreciate such a great webinar. To everybody else, this webinar has been recorded, and it will be posted on our website.